This blog post is of my favorite photos from 2019. One of my hobbies is snapping photos as I take long walks around New York City, and this year in Chicago, Philadelphia, Memphis, and Florida as well. These are my favorites from the past year. All the photos are copyright 2019 Diane L. Durante. This slide shows New York's Hudson Yards, a huge development on the west side in Midtown Manhattan. It's almost completed now. There are links in the email to photos of its progress in 2017 and 2018. The vessel, one of the main tourist draws, is this honeycomb-shaped structure just right of center, and this view is from inside the vessel. Next up are the Needle buildings on Central Park South and 57th Street. Needle buildings are very tall and very narrow. This pic on the right of several new ones under construction was taken from Columbus Circle. And the other picture with Bethesda Fountain has several of the Needle buildings in the background. I don't think Frederick Law Olmsted would be very pleased that they're visible, but I really enjoy seeing new construction in New York City. Next up, some pictures of New York City's harbor and bridges. This one has the Statue of Liberty at the center, and that's the Bayonne Bridge over there, which was recently renovated to make the roadway higher so that taller ships can pass underneath it. And here we have pictures of the Brooklyn Bridge on the left and the Manhattan Bridge just at dawn. Next up, a few architectural details in New York. The amount of thought that went into every detail of Central Park is amazing. I was reminded of that when I visited Lincoln Park in Chicago and noticed that the underpasses were just cast concrete. But in Central Park, every one of the ornamental bridges has a different ceiling. This is trefoil arch. And on the right, here be dragons. Vegetarian dragons, apparently, because they're dining on fruit swags above this 6th Avenue facade. There are their mouths. On the left is an exact replica of Alexander Hamilton's desk at Hamilton Grange. The original desk is owned by the Museum of the City of New York. As a writer, I enjoy seeing other writers' workspaces, and I particularly like to imagine the number of pages that Hamilton must have penned at this desk. On the right is the parlor at Hamilton Grange. You can open those windows and walk directly out onto the porch. It's a really lovely space. Zipping back downtown, on the left is a decorative flagpole base from in front of New York Public Library at 5th Avenue and 42nd. Such elegant figures. They honor New York's boy mayor, John Purroy Mitchell, who died in a plane crash in 1918 while he was trading for the military. On the right side is a column that's on the outside of the former home of Charles Scribner's Sons on 5th Avenue. I really love the design and the fact that they maintain it so well. I think of the door on the left as the Wanderlust door, all kinds of transportation. It's at 20 Exchange Place in the financial district, and it was originally the home of Citibank Farmers Trust, which is now Citibank, and the Canadian Bank of Commerce. And speaking of Wanderlust, the carving on the right is over the entrance of the original home of the American Geographical Society on Audubon Terrace, which is on Broadway up at 155th Street. Ubique is Latin for everywhere, hence the English ubiquitous, and the French ubiquiste for a person who's everywhere. In one of the early incarnations of ForgottenDelights.com, I used this as the homepage illustration. Next up, from Queens in New York City. This is a photo of men pouring white-hot bronze from a glowing crucible at the Modern Art Foundry in Queens. There's a blog post on that visit. Next up, Chicago. Hell of a town. My favorite town, American city, next to New York City. On the left is the waterfront at evening, and on the right is a series of buildings along the river, including the Vista Tower on the right. And this is the Vista Tower all by itself. I'm just fascinated by the colors and shapes of that building. Next up, on the right is an inlaid floor in Luxe Cafe on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. And on the left is a sculpted head that just is sitting in a wall on Dearborn Street. I have no idea who it is or why it's there, but it's really quite lovely. And on the right here is the Carson Peary Scott department store, whose facade is by Louis Sullivan. On the left is a view from the Hancock Tower at sundown, with Lake Michigan on the left. And then we move on to Philadelphia. These are both from Philadelphia City Hall. I happen to really like wrought iron gates. And now we're in New Jersey. I probably took, 1,000 photos of sculpture last year in preparation for doing the chronological series of New York's outdoor sculpture on Instagram, which you can follow if you're on Instagram. This is a sculpture that I had not seen before last year, and I particularly like. It shows that rabble-rouser Thomas Paine in Morristown, New Jersey. Moving on to Memphis. These are both from the Museum of Elvis's Cars at Graceland. How can you not love a man who used TCB, taking care of business, as his logo? And who said, "Ambition is a dream with a V8 engine." Admittedly, that photo is more favorite for the words than for my photography. Also in Memphis, Marlowe's Barbecue, where they always have this Airstream trailer painted like a pig sitting outside, but when we were there, it was decorated for Halloween. Next up, we're on to Florida. This is in Tampa on the Gulf Coast. It used to be the Plant Hotel. It's now the University of Tampa campus and has a small museum to railroad tycoon Henry Bradley Plant in one of its corners. When this enormous structure was built in the 1890s, the minarets were simply exotic. Radical Islam wasn't in any American's wildest nightmares at that point. The Plant Museum includes placards with gems of Victorian-era advice for guests. For example, "None but a low-bred clown will ever carry bonbons away from the table." Also in the Tampa area, from a Buddhist temple that has remarkable breakfasts once a month, this pair of dragons. I have no idea what they symbolize. And on the right is the world's weirdest fig tree, made even weirder by being lit up for Christmas. It's at the Florida Botanical Garden. A couple months ago, we went to see a sand carving competition at St. Petersburg. This piece, which is my favorite, didn't even win a prize. This photo of our new home in Florida made the cut for my favorite photos because the picture tells the whole story. You can see the cowboy single-handedly rolling an 8-by-20-foot shed off the trailer onto this little two-wheeled gizmo, and then he picks it up and moves it onto our lot and positions it precisely within an inch. Further south in Florida, sunrise in Fort Myers while we were waiting to catch a ferry to Key West. And even further south, this was taken at Key West. If you want to get a really blank look, ask someone in Key West where to go to see the sunrise. They are just not morning people down there. So, to close this collection of favorite photos, sunset from a sailboat off Key West. DianeDuranteWriter.com has hundreds of posts on sculpture, painting, Central Park, photography, and my other obsessions. To join the free Sunday recommendations email list, visit the URL online or email me. And you can say, "Well done, Diane," or support my work on a recurring basis and receive rewards by means of the tip jar on DianeDuranteWriter.com. Thank you as always for listening.